Some old games have aged like fine wine. These are the games that will not feel dated in the slightest, even though they are many years old at this point. So let's look at the first game. Alright, let's talk about Quantum Break. Developed by Remedy Entertainment, the same folks behind Alan Wake and Control, Quantum Break is kind of like a mind-bending mashup of a sci-fi thriller and a time-bending action game. I remember when this game first dropped, it was all about that unique mix of gameplay and live-action episodes, which was a pretty ambitious move back then. You play as Jack Joyce, who gets caught in a time experiment gone wrong. The whole deal with time manipulation, freezing enemies, rewinding bullets, and all that cool stuff makes combat feel pretty fresh. It's not just about the mechanics though, it's also about the story. The live action parts might seem a bit cheesy now, but they added this extra layer of depth and immersion that was pretty novel. One thing that stands out to me is the way the story branches out based on your choices. It's like watching a TV show where you get to control the action. And despite its age, the game's visuals still pop, thanks to some slick effects and a solid art direction. Sure, the concept might not be as mind-blowing as it was in 2014, but it's still a great example of how blending different media can create a unique experience. If you missed Quantum Break the first time around, now's a good time to revisit it. It's one of those games that's aged well and still offers a good chunk of entertainment. Plus, it's fun to see how some of those storytelling techniques hold up in today's gaming landscape. Alright, let's dive into Metro Redux. If you're into post-apocalyptic settings with a side of intense survival horror, this one's a classic. It's essentially a re-release of Metro 2033 and Metro Last Light, polished up with new graphics and gameplay tweaks that make them feel fresh even a decade later. The original Metro 2033 dropped us into the grim, underground world of the Moscow metro system, where humanity is left clinging to life after a nuclear apocalypse. You're not just fighting mutants and hostile survivors, you're also dealing with the claustrophobic, eerie atmosphere that makes every step feel like a gamble. Then you've got Metro Last Light, which continues the story with a bit more action but retains that same gritty, immersive feel. The Redux bundle updates both games with improved visuals and gameplay enhancements that make them feel fresh even a decade later. What's cool about the Redux version is how it keeps the core of what made the original game stand out, while smoothing out some of the rough edges. The flashlight mechanics, gas mask maintenance, and resource scarcity create this palpable tension that really hooks you in. And the story, oh man, it's dark and thought-provoking, with characters and choices that really hit home. So if you're into a deep, atmospheric experience and missed these games the first time around, the Redux collection is a solid pick. It's a reminder of how good the Metro series has always been and how well it holds up with a bit of polish and refinement. Watch Dogs turns 12, and it's wild to think about how it set the stage for a new kind of open-world game back in 2014. This one's a bit of a nostalgic trip, especially if you remember when the idea of hacking your way through a city was as fresh as it gets. You step into the shoes of Aiden Pierce, a hacker with a vendetta and a knack for turning every piece of tech into his personal playground. The game is set in a fictionalized version of Chicago, and let me tell you, the whole hacking mechanic was pretty groundbreaking at the time. You could mess with traffic lights, eavesdrop on conversations, and even turn security cameras into your own little network of intel. The story is kind of a classic revenge tale. Aiden's after the people who messed with his family. It's not the most original plot, but it serves as a decent backdrop to the game's tech-heavy gameplay. The real star here was the ability to hack almost anything, which made you feel like you were part of this high-tech espionage thriller. Graphically, it was a stunner for its time, although looking back now, you might notice a few rough spots. Still, the city felt alive and reactive, and the hacking system was both innovative and a lot of fun. You could choose to be a stuffy hacker or go full throttle with the action, which gave the game a lot of replay value. Watch Dogs might not be the smoothest ride compared to its sequels, but it's definitely worth checking out if you want to see where the whole hacking and open world craze started. It's like taking a trip back to when this kind of gameplay was still a cool new idea, and it's fun to see how far the series has come since then. Wolfenstein: The New Order is a perfect example of how to breathe new life into a classic franchise. This game made a huge splash in 2014 by reimagining the Wolfenstein series with a fresh perspective and a whole lot of punch. Set in an alternate history where the Nazis won World War II, the game drops you into a dystopian nightmare filled with futuristic weaponry and oppressive regimes. You play as BJ Blazkowicz, a grizzled soldier trying to take down the Nazi regime with a mix of sheer muscle and a surprisingly deep narrative. The story here is pretty remarkable. It's not just about blowing up bad guys, though there's plenty of that. It's also about exploring the personal struggles of Blazkowicz as he navigates a world where hope is in short supply. The game weaves in some genuinely touching moments and strong character development, which is something you might not expect from a shooter. The gameplay is a blast, literally. You got a range of weapons at your disposal, from classic guns to some truly outlandish stuff that feels like it belongs in a sci-fi movie. The combat is intense and satisfying, and the level design is top-notch, offering a variety of ways to tackle each mission. You can go full Rambo or sneak around and take down enemies quietly. It's up to you. Visually, the game holds up well with its gritty, stylized aesthetic that fits the alternate history setting perfectly, and the soundtrack, it's a blast, pumping up the adrenaline as you tear through the ranks of the Nazi army. Wolfenstein: The New Order might be a decade old, but it's still a fantastic ride. It's a reminder of how well classic franchises can be revitalized with a mix of great storytelling and solid gameplay. If you haven't played it yet, or if it's been a while since you last did, it's definitely worth revisiting. Infamous Second Son, launched in 2014, it was a PlayStation 4 launch title that managed to show off the new console's capabilities in some pretty impressive ways. In this game, you step into the shoes of Delsin Rowe, a guy who suddenly discovers he has superpowers. Delsin's abilities are all about controlling different elements, smoke, neon, and video, among others. Each power has its own set of moves and perks, which makes gameplay really diverse and engaging. Plus, the visual effects when you're using these powers are nothing short of stunning. The story is set in a near-future Seattle, and while it does tread some familiar superhero territory, government conspiracies, moral dilemmas, and the whole "with great power comes great responsibility" shtick, it's done with a lot of style. Delsin is a pretty interesting protagonist with a mix of charm and rebelliousness that keeps things entertaining, and the game gives you choices that actually matter, affecting how the story unfolds and how characters react to you. The open world of Seattle is not just a backdrop but a playground. Climbing walls, running across rooftops, and using your powers to navigate the city make for a dynamic experience. The side missions are pretty fun, and there's a lot to do if you like collecting stuff and exploring. Graphically, infamous Second Son was a stunner back in the day, showcasing the PS4's power with detailed environments and flashy effects. The soundtrack and voice acting are also top-notch, adding to the overall immersive experience. Overall, infamous Second Son holds up well after a decade. It's a fun ride with great powers, a solid story, and an impressive open world to explore. If you're into superhero games or just looking for a good time with some cool powers, this one's worth checking out. Telltale's The Walking Dead, this episodic adventure game kicked off in 2012 and really set the bar for narrative-driven games with its gripping storytelling and complex characters. You play as Lee Everett, a convicted felon who finds himself in the middle of the zombie apocalypse, but the real heart of the game is Clementine, a young girl Lee takes under his wing. The bond between Lee and Clementine is central to the story, and it's one of the most emotionally charged relationships in gaming. Watching Clementine grow and develop throughout the series is a journey in itself, and it's something that really sticks with you long after the credits roll. The game is divided into 5 episodes, each one pushing the story forward with tough choices and moral dilemmas. The choices you make really matter, affecting the story and how characters interact with you. It's a game where every decision feels heavy, and the consequences can be both heartbreaking and rewarding. Graphically, it's got that distinct Telltale style, kind of like a moving comic book with its cel-shaded art. It might not have been the most technically advanced game at the time, but the art style suited the tone of the game perfectly and helped to create an atmosphere that felt both gritty and personal. Even after a decade, Telltale's The Walking Dead is still a standout in the world of narrative games. It's a powerful reminder of how video games can tell stories in deeply moving ways, and it's definitely worth revisiting if you haven't played it in a while. If you're a fan of stories that pack an emotional punch and make you think, this one's a must-play. Beyond Two Souls. This game, created by Quantic Dream, is like an interactive movie with some really intriguing elements. It's been a bit of a mixed bag for some, but there's definitely something special about it. You follow the life of Jodie Holmes, who has a unique psychic connection to an invisible entity named Aiden. The story dives into Jodie's life from childhood to adulthood, with a lot of focus on her struggles and the supernatural events tied to her connection with Aiden. It's all about emotional depth and personal experience, and the narrative unfolds in a non-linear fashion, so you're jumping between different moments of Jodie's life, piecing together her story as you go. Gameplay-wise, it's a mix of quick-time events and exploration. You'll be making decisions that affect how the story unfolds, but a lot of the experience is about being immersed in the narrative rather than traditional game mechanics. The supernatural elements add a unique twist, with Aiden's abilities allowing you to interact with the environment in ways that are both fascinating and sometimes a bit puzzling. Visually, the game has a cinematic quality with impressive graphics and a soundtrack that complements the emotional tone of the story. It's not the most action-packed game out there, but it makes up for it with a compelling narrative and a deep dive into Jodie's life. If you're into games that focus heavily on story and character, Beyond Two Souls is worth checking out. It might not be for everyone, especially if you're looking for traditional gameplay, but its narrative richness and emotional depth make it a standout piece in the interactive drama genre. Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor. If you somehow missed Shadow of Mordor in the last decade, now's the perfect time to see what all the fuss was about. Released back in 2014, this game managed to make waves with its unique blend of Tolkien's universe and some seriously innovative gameplay mechanics. At its core, Shadow of Mordor is an action-adventure game set in the richly detailed world of Middle-earth. But it's not just another trip through the Shire or Rivendell. You're stepping into the shoes of Talion, a ranger with a tragic backstory involving a slaughtered family and a magical bond with a wraith. This connection gives you some pretty wild abilities and sets the stage for a revenge-fueled quest. The main feature of the game is the Nemesis system. It's this clever mechanic that creates a dynamic world where orc captains and warlords remember your past encounters. If you get killed by an orc or run into one again after a while, they'll recognize you, mock you for your previous defeat, and may even have risen in the ranks. It's a cool way to make each encounter feel personal and impactful. The combat system is fluid and satisfying, drawing heavy inspiration from the Batman Arkham series, but with its own twist. You'll find yourself stringing together slick combos and using a range of abilities to take down hordes of enemies. It's fast-paced and visually impressive, making every battle feel intense. Exploration in Shadow of Mordor is pretty engaging, with plenty of side quests and collectibles to keep you busy. The world is designed with verticality in mind, allowing you to climb and traverse the environment in a way that adds a lot to the gameplay experience. Plus, the story, while not reinventing the wheel, is solid and ties well into the broader lore of Middle-earth. Graphically, the game still holds up surprisingly well. The environments are gritty and atmospheric, capturing the dark and menacing tone of Mordor effectively. Character models and animations have aged, but the overall presentation is still immersive. The game's strength lies in its innovative systems and engaging combat, making it a memorable entry in the action-adventure genre. If you're a fan of Tolkien's world or just love a good open-world game with some fresh mechanics, Shadow of Mordor is definitely worth a look. It's a fun, action-packed experience that's aged well and remains a standout title in the last decade. Batman Arkham Knight is the third and final chapter in Rocksteady's critically acclaimed Arkham series, and it's a game that, despite being a decade old, still leaves a lasting impression. Released in 2015, it closed out the trilogy with a bang, delivering a game that truly felt like a grand finale. The game picks up where Arkham City left off, with Gotham City in chaos and Batman facing one of his most dangerous foes yet, the Arkham Knight. This new antagonist has a personal vendetta against the Dark Knight and brings a fresh layer of tension and mystery to the story. From the get-go, Arkham Knight is visually stunning. The open-world Gotham City is expansive and detailed, and you'll find yourself lost in the dark, rain-soaked streets teeming with activity. The game's graphics were top-notch for its time, and while some elements may look dated now, the atmosphere and design still managed to captivate. The combat system, which Rocksteady perfected in the previous games, is as fluid and exhilarating as ever. You'll be diving into combat sequences that are both fast-paced and satisfying, chaining together attacks and using gadgets to outsmart and overpower enemies. There's something undeniably thrilling about taking down a group of thugs while gracefully flipping through the air. One of the most significant additions to Arkham Knight is the Batmobile. It's a cool concept in theory. You can now speed through Gotham and engage in high-octane vehicular combat. While it's a blast to drive around, the Batmobile's frequent use in combat and puzzle solving can feel a bit overdone, and some might find it a bit of a distraction from the core Batman experience. The narrative is a strong point of the game, offering a deep dive into Batman's world and relationships. The Arkham Knight himself is a well-crafted villain with a compelling backstory, and the game provides satisfying conclusions to various plot threads established in the previous games. While the game did receive some criticism for its overuse of the Batmobile and a few repetitive side missions, it still stands as a solid conclusion to the Arkham series. The sense of scale, the richly detailed world, and the epic story make Arkham Knight a memorable title that's worth revisiting even after all these years. In short, if you're a fan of Batman or just looking for a well-crafted open-world game with engaging combat and a gripping story, Batman Arkham Knight is definitely worth your time. It may be a decade old, but it's still a standout experience that showcases Rocksteady's knack for creating immersive superhero adventures. Alright, so let's talk about Sunset Overdrive, a game that kind of came and went, but is definitely worth a second look. It's like the developers took every cool idea they had, threw it into a blender, and then hit the hyper button. The game's set in a vibrant, over-the-top city where a disastrous energy drink has turned everyone into freaky mutants. And oh boy, the mutants are just the start. You're a part of this quirky gang of survivors trying to make the best of a bad situation. The storytelling is cheeky and full of attitude, not taking itself too seriously, which is a breath of fresh air. Gameplay-wise, it's all about speed and style. You're grinding on rails, bouncing off walls, and shooting with a flair that makes you feel like the coolest superhero ever. It's not just about moving fast, it's about moving with personality. The game's combat and traversal systems are a joy to master, and the sheer variety of weapons keeps things spicy. There's a real joy in finding just the right weapon for a particular batch of mutants, and trust me, there are some wacky options. The city itself is a playground with a ton of side missions and collectibles to keep you busy if you want. The world's a little chaotic and maybe a bit overwhelming at times, but that's part of the charm. You get to embrace the chaos and have a blast doing it. Honestly, Sunset Overdrive is one of those games where you just kind of have to let yourself go and enjoy the ride. It might not have set the world on fire when it first came out, but it's got a personality and an energy that's hard to ignore. If you missed it the first time around, give it a shot. It's a fun, offbeat adventure that deserves more love. Okay, let's dive into Ryse, Son of Rome, a game that's like the epic action movie of video games, complete with all the gladiatorial grandeur you could ask for. It's got that big cinematic vibe written all over it. Picture this, you're a Roman soldier fighting through the ancient world, all while the game tries to give you the most dramatic and over-the-top experience possible. First off, the visuals, man, they're pretty stunning, especially for when it came out. The game was a launch title for the Xbox One, so it's got that early next-gen sheen. The environments and character models look like they've been pulled straight from a Hollywood blockbuster. The blood and gore are right up there with the best of them, making every fight look like a brutal ballet. Now, the combat. It's pretty much the definition of button mashing with a few more bells and whistles. You've got this whole press the right buttons at the right time mechanic going on, which can be both satisfying and a bit repetitive. It's cool at first, feeling like you're right in the middle of a grand arena, but it can start to feel a little monotonous as the game goes on. The story? Well, it's a classic revenge tale. You're fighting for justice and glory in the midst of political intrigue and betrayal. It's not exactly breaking new ground, but it's engaging enough to keep you invested. The voice acting and motion capture do a decent job of bringing the drama to life, even if the plot sometimes feels like it's borrowing from every epic historical drama you've ever seen. One of the highlights is definitely the finishers, those brutal, over-the-top kill moves that let you take down enemies in style. They never get old, and there's something inherently satisfying about watching your character deliver the final blow in such a cinematic fashion.